to see you. Happy last class before 2025. Can you even believe it? Where is the time going? I suspect we'll have a lot of people out today because we are so close to the holiday, watching the recording later. So if that's you, welcome. And if you are here and able to turn your cameras on, I would love to see your faces. So go ahead and flip your cameras on. And what we're going to do today is talk about how to pre-screen like a pro. So if you joined the extra help call yesterday, which if you're not joining those, I think you're missing out. We do a much deeper dive. Some of you were there. Feel free to speak up about them if you want to. But I find a lot of value in those, and it's a little bit more casual. Here I keep it moving. On those calls, it's more conversational. So if you're not joining the extra help calls, I would encourage you to start doing so. So what we're going to do today is talk about how to pre-screen leads. This will feed helping more appointments show up for you. I don't think anybody here would be disappointed if you had more appointments actually show up. So what we learned today will help with that. What I will tell you is towards the end of the call, I'm going to ask for one, perhaps two volunteers, depending on time. And I'm going to want one person to be a buyer, one person to be a seller. Hopefully we'll have time for both. And what I'm going to want to do is walk through what does it look like to pre-screen somebody. Now, if you're going to volunteer, here's my request of you is please pre-think of a situation. And you are going to be someone who wants to move forward. You can have an objection and all that. That's fine. But we're not practicing objections today. What I'm going to show you is how to pre-screen people so that they actually move forward. So be thinking about a scenario. And when the time comes, I'll look for a volunteer or two to do that with me. By the way, before we jump in, let me do this real quick. In your client portal, that's not the right spot. Where is it? There it is. You will see here shortly December on-demand content. So we are going to be out, of course, till January 8th. A week from today is Christmas. Oh my gosh. Merry early Christmas. That's why I'm wearing red today for Christmas. And then a week after that, it's New Year's Day. So the next time we will see each other is January 8th. During that time that we're away, I still want to provide value to you. So you will see December on-demand content pop up here very, very shortly. I know Maps was reviewing all that today to get it posted for me. So keep your eye on the client portal for content while we are away from each other. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump into today, and we're going to talk about why it matters to pre-screen. Then we're going to go over the sheets, and then I'm going to practice with somebody, maybe two somebodies. So be thinking of a scenario. Real quick, here are some disclaimers to keep you legally safe. Again, I'm not a lawyer. The screen is not a lawyer. So if you have questions, check with a lawyer. But basically, don't call people on the do not call list. Follow the TCPA laws, all that good stuff. All right, so let's talk about why does pre-screening matter and just what is it? What is pre-screening? So when I say pre-screening, what I'm talking about is all of the questions beyond motivation. So things like, what's your timeline? What's your budget? Are you paying cash or are you going to use a loan? What is your, or who are all of the decision makers? Who's on the title? All that. So we'll go over a pre-screening sheet in just a moment. I'd love to brainstorm for a moment as a class, though, and raise your hand or use the chat box. Why does pre-screening matter? Because some people say, I just talk to them, and if they're interested, I set an appointment, and then I'll figure it out once I'm with them in person. Some people say set the appointment first and then pre-screen them. I believe you screen them before you set an appointment. Why does pre-screening matter? Let's have a conversation about it. And again, raise your hand or use a chat box. Holly, go ahead.
I would say because you want to make sure, like, especially your your appointment to actually what's held ratio is important. So
Yeah.
if you're not getting all that information from them and it's not held, it's pointless.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion.
I agree. I was actually working with a large team a couple years ago. This is actually really fascinating. It was a large team. They were setting around 80 appointments. I think it was a week, if I remember it correctly. But their show ratio was terrible. It was like 20% or something like that. So I actually coached them. I said, I actually want you to set less appointments, but you will have more clients setting less appointments. And it's because they were just setting it with anybody. Oh, you're breathing and you like real estate? I'll set an appointment with you. So they were just setting appointments left and right. And so it looked good. This is why, and I'm about to get real passionate. This is why I lose my mind when I'm at a real estate conference and people are like, well, they're setting this many appointments a month. So I guess I should set that many appointments a month. It's like, well, what's their actual success? You kids, I mean, listen, if you wanted to, you could set 50 appointments this month if you wanted to, if you weren't screening anybody. It doesn't mean anything, actually. And anyway, this team reduced, I think they dropped down to in the 50s. So they went from 80s to 50s set a week. But they actually netted more signed clients because the appointments they were setting were actually good appointments. So don't be afraid as you work on quality. Don't be afraid if your quantity goes down. I understand that could be a little bit of like a, but actually, if you're just setting appointments with anyone, I would expect as your quality goes up, your appointments go down. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Also forgive me. I am once again congested. I feel like a cartoon character today, especially when I say anything ending in a G. So hopefully you understand me today. All right, Patricia and then Marcy, and then we'll jump back in. So again, the question is, why does pre-screening matter? Patricia, go ahead. You are muted. There you go.
Yeah, I saw it in the comments too. I think quality over quantity as well, right? And I just not to just get the number of this is how many appointments that we set, but here's we're setting the appointments with quality candidates or quality potential clients that we can spend our time with and really
Yes.
lean into to take them to the finish line.
Yes, 100%. I agree. All right, and then lastly, thank you for that. Lastly, Marcy, and then we'll get back to the content.
So pre-screening, it's definitely important. Now I'm a commercial agent, so I do it a little bit differently. I do the pre-screening in person because there's a lot to get into. Like it could be a shopping center with 20 different tenants or whatever, and I have to get, into some of the stuff. And then I'll set a second appointment would be like the listing appointment. So I do like two appointments.
So why do you think it matters? Why do you think it matters to pre-screen?
Well, one, you have to get to their motivation, and two, you have to, you have to find out details about the property and stuff like that. You can't even do a proper like pricing proposal unless you have, the leases or, whatever. So you kind of need both.
I totally agree. Yeah. So what Marcy just said, yes, you need motivation. You need to be prepared to have the conversation, and you just can't do that well if you're not pre-screening, right? And to that point, there's actually a couple commercial agents in here. Your screening process and questions might look different, but the philosophy is the same, right? It's the same no matter buyer, seller, for residential, commercial, the questions just might look different. Yeah. So let's talk about why it matters. So the value of pre-screening ultimately is, are you ready, willing, and able? Do y'all like my little, what is that, a magnifying glass? I spent some time to line that up. I will just let you know. But are you ready, willing, and able? Is that that's like the main idea here. So we're going to clarify who is ready and who is not ready. And by the way, don't get discouraged if they're not ready. This is a business where we are finding right now people and I'm building the pipeline for the future. Do you remember when we talked about the football analogy early in this program? And we said, if all you're focused on is getting footballs, so to speak, into the end zone, eventually you're going to run out of people or balls on the field. And if you're only concentrating on adding people to the field, you're eventually going to just have a whole bunch of people in the middle of the field and nobody's going anywhere. So don't be discouraged if you pre-screen people and realize, man, I thought they were ready and they're probably like 6 months out. Well, great. 6 months from now, you'll be really glad that you discovered this person. So to help you clarify who is ready and who is not, it also prevents disappointment. It can be very disappointing to a client to be excited, thinking that they could buy a house. And then they meet with you for just a few minutes and you quickly realize, like, oh, they're not eligible. That could be wildly disappointing to someone. It's better. I mean, I think it's disappointing no matter what, but it'd be better to find that out on the phone versus in person. So if you're talking to someone and you realize, maybe they just went bankrupt and so their credit cannot get a loan and they don't have any rich relatives hanging around that want to give them a loan. That we already know, like, this person is not going to qualify right now. And let's discuss that before they actually take the time off to come be with us, right? So we're going to prevent wasting time, their time and my time, your time, and it will create efficient appointments. What I mean by that is ideally an appointment's like 30 to 45 minutes. Well, if I haven't pre-screened them at all, I'm going to need to do all of that in real time. So ideally, if I'm meeting with Holly, I already know before Holly even walks in the door, I know what her house is worth. I've already done my research. I've already done all that. And I know what she thinks it's worth. I know what we could actually get. I have an idea of what kind of objections she might have. Maybe I pre-screened her and on the phone, she told me she thought her house was worth $450. And I know that she owes $300. So she has $150 there, kind of, discretionary a little bit. Well, maybe I do the CMA and realize, oh, her house is only worth $420. Well, I know before I meet with Holly, okay, I need to actually practice delivering this news to her. Maybe I run that through with a fellow agent. Like, how am I going to talk to Holly about there's a 30,000 difference between what she wants and what's actually going to happen here? So that's the value of pre-screening, is I'll know before I walk in what Holly is really expecting. So it allows me to prepare. It also builds value. It builds value. So I've timed this over the years, and it takes about 12 to 15 minutes. And that's from the top. A lot of times these are multiple conversations, but let's say I'll call Ryan, and out of the gate, Ryan is interested, he's motivated. So on the very first call, I get motivation, I pre-screen him, and I set the appointment. If I'm doing all of that in one phone call, it takes about 12 to 15 minutes. That's not that long, but it's enough that I have heard things like, why didn't other agents ask me these questions? Have you ever been shopping for anything and you encounter different salespeople and there's maybe one salesperson that sticks out and they ask you some really good questions? And then you kind of wondered, like, why did the other people ask me these questions? I'm shopping for some marketing services right now, digital marketing services. And I interviewed 6 different companies, which was a lot. It felt like a lot. And as I was interviewing these different companies, 5 of them asked me a lot of questions. And this one guy, the 6th company, got on. And for 18 minutes, he talked at me. Do you know what I did while he was talking at me? I started scrolling Facebook. Like, I wasn't even like aware, but I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the most boring conversation. I was scrolling Facebook and I kind of laughed because I'm like, oh, this isn't looking good for him. But the point is, he was like way into the weeds talking about his company and what his company could do for me. And he was using all these words and I didn't understand. And I thought, he doesn't know anything about my business. Like, he hasn't asked me any questions. So it reduced my belief that he could actually help me because he didn't know what my goals were. Does that make sense, everyone? Like, how could this guy help me when he doesn't even know what I'm trying to do? It's almost like a doctor throwing a prescription at you without asking you any questions. It doesn't really make sense, right? And so that's what pre-screening does. And I used to call a lot of expireds back in the day, like 2014. That was a big part of my business. And if you've ever called expireds, a lot of them will say, oh, I've had like 12 people call me today, right? And I would keep them on the phone sometimes, not all the time. And often, as I started to pre-screen them, they would stop and say, why didn't the other agents who called me today ask me these questions? And I knew when they said that, like, okay, I just got this listing. Because it's like... Can I put my high school teaching hat back on? I'm going to give you an analogy I used to use when I was a high school teacher. If you've only ever had Cheese Whiz, do you remember Cheese Whiz when it was in the can? You might think Cheese Whiz is pretty good. But man, once you have Brie or Gouda, you're like, okay, Brie, Cheese Whiz, that's crap. I don't want Cheese Whiz anymore. I want the Brie or the Gouda or the feta. Well, let's just say a lot of agents out there might be showing up like Cheese Whiz. And you show up asking all the good questions, and they didn't even know that they didn't know what good cheese was until they met you. And once they met you, all the others pale in comparison. Now, that is a ridiculous analogy, but I was a high school teacher, and sometimes I have ridiculous analogies. But that's the analogy I'll give you, is it will actually help you stick out. And what I thought to myself is, for everyone saying, why did anybody else ask me these questions? I know there's probably others that think it, they just weren't saying it out loud. So it really does set you apart. So that brings us to the next bullet point, is it sets you up as the professional. And it lets them have faith that you actually can solve their problems because you actually know their situation. So let's review the buyer and seller. In a moment, I'll pull up the sheets. These are the buyer and seller sheets. I gave them to you in our November on-demand content, and they're also posted under Today Session 5. What you'll notice is part 1, 3, and 4 are the same. Does anybody remember what part 1, what are the 4 parts of a conversation? Does anybody remember, please? If nobody remembers, I might have to quit my job. What are the 4 parts of a conversation? Holly, please save the day. What are they? You can unmute yourself.
I hope so, because it's what I go by here. So
Okay.
motivation we go by,
Yep, that's fine.
pre-qualification.
Yep.
Our third's a little weird. It's kind of like, great, sounds like you're on a great path. And 4th is a follow-up to set the appointment.
So similar. So what we teach in this class is motivation, pre-qual, so same thing as you, or pre-screen, I should say. So motivation that we pre-screened. Then 3 is your next step is whatever it is. For some people, it will be talk to a lender. Some people, it will be we just should stay in touch, whatever. And step 4 is give it a deadline. So 3 and 4 kind of go together. You could even say there's 3 parts to a conversation: motivation, pre-screen, give them a next step with a deadline. That's basically all 4 steps. Okay. So you were very close there, Holly. Can I be your coach here for a minute, everyone? Thank you, Holly, by the way, for putting yourself out there. If I said, what are the 4 parts of the conversation, and you thought to yourself, please don't call on me because I have no idea, I will just be honest with you. It makes me concerned, because that is the core spine of every conversation. So to make a lot of money in real estate and help a lot of families, you really need to know it's motivation, that I pre-screen them, that I give them a next step with a deadline. Every call, whether they're Sphere, for sale by owner, a web lead, no matter where they came from. So can you all say it with me? You're all muted. So say it out loud, but we won't hear you. But say it with me. I want to see your mouth moving. It's motivation, pre-screen, next step, deadline. Do it with me again. Motivation, pre-screen, next step, deadline. Got it. Okay. So back to this. The buyer and seller sheets are the same. Motivation looks the same. Now, pre-screening does not look the same, because they're going to ask different questions if they're a buyer versus a seller. But part 3 and part 4 are the same. So really, your buyer seller sheets are almost identical. The only thing that's different is what questions we ask to pre-qualify them. I'm not going to ask a seller, how soon do you want to buy a house? Unless they're also a buyer. There's just certain questions we'll ask depending on which one they are. So again, part 1, motivation. And the darker parts are the ones that are the same. So part 1, motivation, great. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. That's your transition statement. And we taught this in a previous class. If you want a deeper dive review, you could go and catch that. But yeah, thank you for that, Louise, in the chat box. 4 parts of our conversation. Motivation, great. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. Then we pre-screen them, and that's what's different. And then part 3, your next step is part 4, give it a deadline. And that's that. I can't remember if I mentioned this to you. Deadline within 48 hours. That's because if it's more than 48 hours, they're not likely to do it. So if I tell Ryan, your next step is to talk to a lender, today is Wednesday, it's 3:50 where I live, so I need him to do that by Friday at 3:50, or he's not likely to do it. Okay, so within 48 hours. All right, so why do I have a road picture up here, you might be wondering. So I'm a visual person. I think a lot of realtors are actually. I want you to think of your pre-screening sheet, that buyer sheet or that seller sheet, kind of like a highway. And ideally, I stay on the highway and I'm in control. Listen, when I'm the driver of the car, shouldn't I be in control? And it's not because I'm a controlling person. It's because if I'm the driver, I need to keep everyone safe. So when I'm the driver, I'm in control. It's not a control thing, it's a safety thing. You know, when I go to the doctor's in control. Because, and maybe control's the wrong word. People can have, depending on your experience with control, you might have negative feelings around that word. You could say guide. You know, the doctor is the guide. The driver is the guide. But the point here is we need to guide that conversation. We're not just going to go wherever the client wants to go. And what I mean by that is if I'm asking them about motivation and they interrupt me and they're like, hey, could you tell me a little bit about what the interest rates look like right now? Well, if I'm in the middle of asking them about motivation, I'm not going to stop and talk about interest rates because I'm the guide. Does that make sense, everyone? All right. Imagine if I taught this class, because this is a good parallel. And I said, hey guys, anybody in the class at any time you want, unmute yourself and ask me any question that you want as it relates to real estate. Or not, whatever you want. Just unmute yourself and just ask me questions. How would y'all feel about that as fellow students? If there was someone that was like, hey, totally off topic, but I have a question. And I let them do that. How would you feel about that as students? You'd probably write maps and tell them to fire me. It's probably what you would do. You would not enjoy it. So can we agree that me having a sense of guiding you, controlling you, saying, here's when we'll do questions, here's when we won't do questions. Can we see how that's actually a service to the class? So please hear me when I say this. Where I see people struggle with buyer-seller conversations is when they do not guide the conversation. If I'm in the middle of asking you about motivation and say I'm talking to Susie, and I'm like, hey, Susie, what makes you want to move? And she's like, oh, I want to downsize, but could you tell me what a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house costs right now in the Greenville County? Well, if I actually answer that question, that would be like saying anybody at the class anytime ask a question and you could totally derail me. Got it? So I'll teach you how you navigate that today. What I like to do is say, hey, that's actually a great question, Susie. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Let me learn a little bit more about your motivation and then we'll come back to that. So the analogy that I want to give you with this whole driver thing is exits happen. You know, if I'm asking Susie questions and she's like, yeah, but I am curious, what do houses cost right now? Well, now I'm on an exit. But I want to get back on the highway as fast as possible, which is the buyer seller sheet. So that's where I would say something like, that's a great question. Let me write it down and we'll come back to it in just a moment. That would be a good phrase to write down. That's a great question. Let me finish learning about why you want to move and then we'll dive deep into what home prices are. Okay. So this isn't in your notes, but you might want to just jot down somewhere. That's a great question. We'll come back to that in just a moment. That's how you navigate that. And you all have heard me do that in this class, right? I know I do it sometimes. It's not something I have to do all the time. But sometimes people will ask a question. It's a great question. But I know it's a little off topic. So I might say, hey, that's a great question. We'll do it at the end of class. Let's keep going for now, but we'll come back to it. And that's where that tends to be what we want. We want a guide, right? Are we good on this concept? Can y'all just give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Okay, good. All right, so what I want to do now, we're going to take pretty much the rest of class and I'm going to demonstrate for you what does it look like to talk to a buyer and a seller. I want a volunteer, and tell me in the chat box if you are willing to volunteer, that I'll select someone. I want a realistic scenario. So what that means is you're pre-thinking the story. It's not, so like, what is your motivation? Have that locked in your mind. And it's not just downsizing. Like, why do you want to downsize? Think through this in your head. Honestly, when I'm role playing, I usually am just myself from 2014 when I bought the house I'm sitting in right now. So if you want to just be yourself, that's fine. Feel free to have some mild pushback. Questions are fine, but the goal of this is to fully demonstrate from hello all the way through a set appointment. Also, did y'all notice a whole bunch of people just dropped offline? They are missing out. That's pretty funny. So I will be the agent, and you'll just you'll be more the observer. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to, and Patricia, I see you, so I'll come to you, Patricia, in just a moment. And yeah, you can have whatever motivation you want. That's fine. As long as it's just a realistic scenario. That's all I care about. What I'm doing is I'm in session 5, pre-screened like a pro. And I'm going to pull down the buyer sheet. Because Patricia, I saw you want to upsize, so I'm assuming you're a buyer. And then in a little bit, if we have time, I'll also demonstrate seller. Okay? All right. Patricia, are you ready? And then Pearl, how about I come to you next and you can be a seller?
Ready.
Perfect. So seller, you'll be next. Pearl, you'll be next. Oh, Patricia, you're not driving anymore. I wasn't expecting to see you. You look like you're in a cool library or something.
No, this is our office, but yeah, no, I had to
Awesome.
get back quick.
All right, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take notes. I'm gonna forget that all of you are here, and I'm gonna put on my buyer agent hat right now. Okay. And I'm just gonna be, so the way I want this to work, Patricia, the whole time you are a buyer. We're not in a class together. You're not gonna break that role. If anybody has a question, don't interrupt us. Everybody, it's just me and Patricia. Then when I'm done, then we'll do our download, ask questions and all that stuff. So if you have a question pop up, just write it down so you don't forget. And what I'll do is I'll toggle back and forth from sharing the buyer sheet so you can see what I'm working through. And then I'll also take notes on my whiteboard and I'll kind of just toggle back and forth. Okay? All right. So ring, ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Patricia, this is Anna from the Haro Group. Thank you so much for taking my call today. I am calling because I saw you were on our website last night and I'm curious, what has you thinking about moving?
I mean, I was just browsing, but
Okay.
you know, our house is, you know, it was good a few years ago, but I have 4 kids now. We might want to have more. I could definitely use some more space. I mean, I'm not ready to move right now, but
Okay.
just want to see like what's out there.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's what a lot of people do on the internet is they start off looking kind of early. That's totally fine. Now, I heard you say you have 4 kids and you want more space. What would more space do for you?
Give me my sanity.
Okay, tell me more about that. How will more space give you sanity? That's an interesting comment you're making.
Well, there's 2 pieces to that. I love having my kids near me and we can, you know, snuggle all weekend when they're home, but we're also working from home. And so it's
Okay.
really difficult when they come home from school or we're trying to make calls to, you know, have them so close.
This sounds like real life stuff, Patricia.
Very true life stuff.
So you love that you can snuggle with your kids, and you work but the challenge is you work from home and you're trying to make calls. So when the kids get off school, it's just a little chaotic.
Yes.
So what would it do for you to have more space in regards to working from home specifically? Like, what would that do for you? How would it benefit you?
Well, if I had more space, I could have a dedicated office area, maybe have it closed off. You know, we have a big table, big space to have agents. I want to have agents on our team, but I also want to keep it as a professional environment.
Okay.
And so being able to separate those 2 spaces a little more distinctly, I think would be helpful for that.
Okay, that's actually really cool. So what I'm hearing you say is it's ultimately, it sounds like it's business related too. So you obviously live in the house, you have 4 kids, you're trying to work a business from home. And what you like is the idea of a house that could serve as a business office space where agents could come and it's dedicated and separate, but also you have your family space and you're not losing your sanity. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now,
That's fair.
Patricia, I have to ask you a question that just popped in my mind. Some people have a house and then they have an office they rent somewhere or something. What makes you
Yeah.
want to have this office space in your actual home?
Well, I think that's also part of the culture. We're a family business and very
Okay.
family oriented. And, um, we live in the neighborhood that we market and that we want to do our business in. So it keeps us in this dedicated area, it keeps our agents knowing about this area, what it is, and so forth. But I think it's just getting a little bit too commingled where we could use a little bit more separation.
Okay, I hear that. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say, Patricia, by the way, I think that's really cool culture, by the way. So I'm hearing you say is you want more space with the 4 kids. You want your sanity. You want to be able to snuggle with your kids, but you also want to have a separate space that's professional. And the reason that matters to you is you want agents in your home because you have a family culture.
Yeah.
You want them to sit around your table, but you really want that house where you currently are, basically, like in that same general area, because
Uh-huh.
you are marketing and going after the houses near you. So that's why you want it in your house, not like a separate office you rent somewhere.
Yes.
Is that all accurate?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
That's fair.
Okay. Is there anything else that makes you want to move?
I mean, it would be nice to have a bigger house, just
Okay.
in general. My kids
And-
love playing hide and seek, like having
Okay.
a backyard with a pool.
Okay. Uh, so how will having a backyard, pool, bigger house where they can play hide and seek, what would make that worth moving to you?
Well, okay, we're getting kind of deep here, but I've always envisioned having like just a nice size big house where everybody could play hide and seek, everybody's friends could come over. Like it's just a place that everybody comes to. Um,
Okay.
and everybody does come to our house right now. It's just very small compared to the average size for the neighborhood. And I'd love for my kids to experience that now while they're smaller versus us doing that when they're older.
Okay. You sound pretty awesome, Patricia, which I already kind of knew. But it sounds like for you, I'm hearing lots and lots of community. Like you want to be the gathering house.
Yeah.
While you can do that now, the spaces are kind of encroaching on each other. But then you want to be the place where your kids' friends come over. You want to be the hangout spot. And you want your kids to experience that while they're young on up, not waiting till they're older to start experiencing that. Is that right?
For sure. And then the same for people on our team. Like we had someone on our team who his son would come over after school too. So, I want to be able to create the space for, the team members. Like if they have families, they can also come over. We have the space where the parents can get the work done and then the kids could just enjoy the area too without have to be shushed or worry about being too loud. And we
Okay.
can, all benefit from that.
Okay. So I'm going to try to summarize this and you tell me if I'm right, because I want to make sure I'm on the same page, Patricia.
Okay.
It's about more space, keeping your sanity. And what that really boils down to is the culture of your team. You're a very themed family, team family culture. And you want to be able to have a place where they can come, gather around the table. And to add to that, the kids aren't encroaching on your space. They could be kids. You're not telling them like, shh, we're all trying to work here.
Yes.
And you want to be a place not only where your kids can hang out, but their friends want to hang out. And even your team members' kids can hang out. And basically,
Yeah.
like the gathering spot of community. Is that sum it up pretty well?
That's a good way to sum it. Never thought of it that way.
Okay. Is there anything else that makes you want to move?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Well, let's see what we need to do to make that happen, Patricia. So let me ask you a couple questions because I want to make sure I'm on the same page with you with like motivation level here. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how motivated are you to become that gathering place for your community and for your team? and your family?
8.
An 8. And what makes it an 8 for you?
Um, I mean, if money was an issue, it'd be 10.
Okay.
So I make it an 8 because I think about financially what it would take to get there, and then diverting my focus, maybe not as much into business, to be able to make that happen.
Okay. Okay. I think you kind of just answered this, but what would need to happen for you to be a 10? Just so I'm really clear.
Oh, more revenue or
More-
more profit
Okay. So basically, if your business had more profit, you would be a 10.
for sure.
Okay. Well, let's see what we need to do to make it happen. And I have some questions for you around that. I'm going to pause real quick. That's an example of the highway. When she said money, I need more money, it would have been very easy to launch into money questions. But I'm not done by 1 through 4 questions. So we're not doing that right now. And now that I'm going into pre-screening, that's what I'll ask her the money questions. So that's an example of what I was just teaching a few moments ago about sometimes when you're on the conversation, a side thing could come up that you want to chase and you got to stay on track. All right. So now I know I've isolated money is the only thing stopping her. Okay. So back to it. So great. Patricia, let's see what we need to do to make it happen that you're the community house for your team, your family, really everybody. So first of all, are you already working with a real estate agent?
Yeah. My husband. Let's say no here, I guess.
If you were an agent in this class, so no, you're not working with a real
No,
estate.
because I'm just looking right now, right?
Okay, okay.
Not that serious.
Okay. Now, in your dream world, what is your ideal? Like, if you could wave a magic wand, what's your ideal time frame for being in that house that's the party house, the community house?
Probably the next 18 months.
Okay. Now, describe for me, I think I know this, but what's your target location?
So there's a neighborhood that's about less than a mile away from here. Beautiful.
Uh-huh.
It has lakes. You feel like you're at camp, but it's in the middle of
Ooh.
the city. Nobody, you're like, it's surrounded by trees. It's beautiful. So
Okay.
that would be my location. It's called Sandalwood.
Okay. So already can I come visit once you live in this house? Because that sounds awesome.
Yes, it's awesome.
All right. All right. So tell me about your ideal home. I just got the idea from like the location when you said Sandalwood, but like how many bedrooms, bathrooms, square feet? What are we looking at here?
Probably at least 6 bedrooms.
Okay.
It'd be nice if they all had their ensuite baths. Sharing
Okay.
baths with children can get very difficult.
Yep.
5,000 to 7,500 square feet. I
Okay.
would ideally like at least half an acre.
Okay.
Want the
Perfect.
space, and I want it overlooking one of the lakes.
Okay. And by the way, you're not seeing me right now, but if I was doing this by hand, I would be writing in this section overlooking lakes. I would be writing all this down. I would write down that she wants a pool. I would write all that down right here. Okay. And then Patricia, what is your price range?
Tim's coming home from school. So those homes go for probably around 4 million,
Okay.
4 to 6.
Okay. And then how do you imagine paying for this home? Would you be paying cash or would you want a loan to do it?
I mean, probably need to be both.
A little of both? Okay.
Yeah.
How much cash do you think you would have to put towards it? If you know, and if you don't know yet, that's okay.
Fantastic. So I would probably want to take the equity from our current house. and
Okay.
use-
Okay.
So
So
Yeah.
Patricia, what I'll do in just a moment. I'll ask you questions about the house that you want to sell. Because I'll be honest with you, like you have some pretty freaking awesome goals, and I'm hearing you would be a 10 right now if it weren't for finances. Now I have no idea what it's going to look like when I run numbers on the house you have now. But if we could find out you have enough equity in your house right now, and it was doable with a loan plus your equity, is there any reason you wouldn't just move? It sounded like earlier you were saying that was the only thing holding you back.
Yeah, no, there'd be no reason. Well, we need to make sure homes are available, but I'm sure we could figure
Right.
that out. I'll go
Okay.
door knock those houses.
Okay. Well, and we know we're pretending you're not an agent for right now. But so what I'll do, Patricia, is in just a moment, I'll ask you questions about the house you have to sell so we could see if maybe or maybe not. But what if we could get you into this community house? Why wait 18 months when your kids are only 18 months older to experience the pool and the friends coming over and the sanity piece? Let me help save you some gray hairs and get you into a house sooner if we can. So I'll ask you some questions here in just a minute. So, what do you know about the loan process and all that to buy a house?
I'm fairly familiar with that process.
Okay.
I would say I haven't run the numbers on this one though, so I would need to understand and be open to knowing
Yeah.
how, like, what would it take to make that work?
Okay. Well, and I'll help you with that in just a moment. So that's part of what I'm here for. This is what I do all day, Patricia, and I could guide you through that process. So let me ask you a few more questions about the house you're selling or buying, excuse me. Then we'll talk about the house you're selling, and then I'll put together a game plan here. And you might be right. You might have to wait 18 months, but it'd be cool if you could do that sooner, just hearing your goals. Who are all the decision makers for this?
Yeah, me and my husband.
You and your husband? Okay, great. Okay, let me ask you a few questions about the house you have to sell, and then I'll put my thinking cap on and figure out what we should do next. So, I have your address here up in front of me, and I'm looking at the house you have now, and I'm just going to make stuff up. I pulled up the old listing, Patricia, and it looks like it's around 3,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2-story with a 3-car garage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when was your house built?
1958.
Okay. And what updates? I see the previous listing, so what it looked like when you bought it. I'm curious, what updates, if any, have you done since you bought it?
Everything. Like we took down the walls, we opened it up, we raised the ceilings, completely redid the kitchen. So it has substantial updates.
That's incredible. Okay, that'll help you with equity, which is awesome.
Yes.
On a scale of 0 to 10, what would you rate the condition of your house today? 0 would be like, tear it down, no human should live here. 10 would be, I could list it tomorrow or even put it on HGTV.
We're like at 8 or 9.
Okay, what would make it a 10?
Filling it with beautiful furniture.
Okay, so maybe like some staging stuff.
Yeah, staging. That's a great point. Yeah, staging.
Okay.
We might have some of the old furniture while we've been focusing on updating everything.
Okay, so it sounds like the house itself is in good shape. It's more what's in the house maybe would help it look like a 10.
There's some things we need to finish, like some paint we need to finish up, but I mean, it's nothing. We're finishing right now the last major thing, which is the kitchen.
Okay, that's all kind of minor stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So Patricia, just what do you think? If you had to guess, what do you think your house is worth today?
Probably around 1.4.
Okay. And how did you come up with that number?
Square footage, average square foot for the neighborhood.
Okay. And when did you buy your house and for how much did you buy?
We bought it in 2022, I believe, 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we bought it, I think, $850.
Okay. Awesome. And what do you owe on your house, roughly?
Around 700.
Okay. Awesome. So you have a good amount of equity there, which is great. And where are you? Like, are you current on payments at this moment?
Yeah.
Awesome. And then just a couple more questions. How much do you want to walk away with after closing on the house you would sell? Like, what's your goal to have in your pocket?
I mean, as much as possible.
Yeah. Would it be like,
Right? So like how
or a
could
million?
Huh?
Would it be like 300 or a million? Like, what would you have to have?
I mean, if we could get $1 million of equity out of this, that would be substantial down payment for a future house.
Okay. So the goal here is down payment for the next house, really.
Yes.
Okay. So Patricia, my goal is to help you earn as much money as possible. Honestly, it helps everybody. It helps you, helps the neighborhood, helps me. But I always ask every client, what's the number you have to have, or just would it make sense to move? Because when I do my research, I want to make sure that number is there. So what's the number like, if I don't get this, I'm just not moving.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because I'm thinking about I would at least want the 20% down for a
Okay.
future house. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing you say, basically you need 20% down for your next house, or it's just not going to work. It wouldn't make sense and you would wait.
Minimum, right? Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And on the house you're selling, I think it's probably you and your husband again, but is there anybody else that's a decision maker on the selling side or anybody else that's on the deed?
No.
Okay. So I have another couple questions in a minute, but here's what I'm thinking, Patricia. Really, I think the next step is for me to do some research on my side and then set an appointment to meet with you. And I know that you're a ways out, and that's okay. But I also heard you say if the numbers work, you don't see any reason to wait to have basically the community house for your team, the camp-like atmosphere where you're with the trees and the lakes. Like you don't see a reason to wait if the financials work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So really the next step for us would be to meet together. My next step is to do research and then us together meet. And I'll just lay out for you. Here's what it looks like your current house is worth. We could look at the kinds of houses you want to buy and see like what do they cost and just see like with what your house is currently worth and what the houses that you want cost, can you get at least 20% to put towards it? And then one of two things will happen. You'll realize, wow, I could do this sooner than I thought, or you'll have a good game plan for, getting you there. So before we do that real quick, Patricia, what are you looking for in a realtor?
Intelligence. Expertise. I guess expertise is a better word for that.
And what does expertise
Like-
look like for you? Like, how would you know someone had expertise?
They would come with solutions, ideas of how we can maximize the value on this home, find a solution to how we could figure out our next home.
Okay.
Come with a game plan. I'm pretty clear on what I want.
Yeah, it's the path.
So how we get there, if that could get solved,
Yeah.
then that's what I would need.
Yeah.
And then tough negotiator, right? So we maximize our price, our sale, and if there's a deal to be had, have that.
Yeah. I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So basically someone with smarts to come up with a game plan and help you maximize price and negotiate the next house so you get kind of like minimal price for the next house you're buying.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Anything else you're looking for in a realtor?
No,
Okay. Is there anything else I should know before we meet so that I can prepare for the appointment?
just like to get straight to the point. So
Okay. Cool. I can totally do that. So Patricia, really we have the next step for us. I'm gonna do some research. And the next step would be for us to meet together and do three things and really just interview each other, make sure we're a good fit. Like you said, you're looking for someone intelligent. If you don't think that's me, don't hire me, but I think we'll get along just fine. We'll also go back over your motivation and pricing. And then if everything looks good, we'll sign paperwork to activate moving forward and the next step. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and pick a time. And by the way, we'll want your husband to also be there since he's also a decision maker.
Mhm.
So as I offer you this time, consider both of your schedules. Let me put you on hold real quick and check the calendar. Put you on hold. Oh, and you know what, Patricia, real quick, I should have asked you this. How on the same page with all this is your husband?
Happy wife, happy life.
Okay, so have you all talked about this and he's on board with moving?
We've talked about this. He can get on board with moving.
Okay, you know him best. Would he be up for meeting with me just to make a game plan?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, all right. So let me put you on hold and check the calendar and see what's available. Da-da-da-da. Okay, Patricia, it looks like I've got either 4 o'clock tomorrow or 3:30 on Friday. Which one of those could you commit to? You and your husband.
Friday.
Friday, 3:30. Okay. I'm going to save that spot for you, which means anybody else who wants 3:30 on Friday, I'm going to have to turn them away. With that in mind, can you think of anything that would prevent you or your husband being able to come?
No, but let's just confirm that the day
Okay.
before.
So what I'll do, well, I kind of view it as we're firming it now because I will start turning people away for that spot. So Patricia, I'm going to put you down in pencil. How soon could you check with your husband? Because my goal is I put you down in permanent magic marker, but I'm not going to do that until you're 100% sure. So how soon could you check with your husband?
I'll check with him tonight.
Okay. Do you want to check with him now? You can put me on hold for a second.
Okay.
Okay. I'll hold. Guys, this is for real. This is exactly how I would do it in real life. All right.
Yes, we're good.
You're good? Okay, cool. And what we'll do, here's the deal, Patricia. I'm going to run numbers between now and Friday. If I can see you're far, far, far apart, I will call and tell you so you don't waste your time coming in. But if you don't get that call from me, it means I think there's some hope for you to do this maybe sooner than you thought, and we'll proceed with the appointment. And we'll just make a game plan together when we're together in person on Friday. And from there, we'll decide what the next step should be. So Patricia, we're going to meet and talk all the logistics here. But remember, the main reason we're meeting is to help you have that community house where your kids are in the pool, the friends are over, your teammates have friends, their kids are over. You have your sanity, and you have a separate space for your business where the agents can come, and a separate space for your home, and you're living in the community that you want to serve. So that's why we are meeting. That's the whole goal here. So I will see you 3:30 on Friday. When we hang up, you'll probably have more questions pop up. Write them down, and I'll call you before the appointment to see what other questions you have, and then we'll talk about it Friday. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, I'll see you Friday, Patricia.
Okay.
All right, we'll stop there. Okay, before I take questions or feedback, because you probably have some, I want to just point out a few things. One, thank you, Patricia. That sounded like your real life. I'm wildly fascinated. So,
That was real life, and he really made me feel like this is possible sooner than
Yeah.
rather than later.
I really would run numbers. Like if you were like in my town, I would want to have an appointment with you 3:30 Friday. Yeah. But also what's cool, I didn't know you were being yourself. I kind of suspected as we got into it. But also how cool. Guys, do you see why it matters to dig in? Because Patricia, it sounds like your hope legit is higher than it was at the beginning of the call. And you happen to be yourself, like run the numbers. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe there's something there that you could do, maybe not, but at least you'll know. So a couple of things I want to point out real quick before I do questions or whatnot. In the financial section, the reason I ask all of those questions is I realized through that she had, what did you say you owed? I think you had like 700 in equity or something. So that's the kind of stuff that helps me know when I'm preparing for the appointment, what kind of house does she want? Because I pre-screened her, which is the whole point of today's class. I know she wants 6 bedrooms, 6 bath. Like I have all that. So I could start just doing a little research of like, what does it cost to live in Sandalwood for that? Would 700 in equity be enough to get her in there? And I could at least figure that out before we meet. Awesome. Notice too, that was pre-screening buyer and seller. And that took 22 minutes from the top. So let that be a guide. Your conversations do not need to be real long. We were done pre-screening buyer at 4:12. I was watching. That was 12 minutes in. We started right at 4 o'clock. And then the extra information for seller took 10 more minutes. Okay. All right. So let's go to questions or observations. Ryan and then Louise. Thank you so much, Patricia, by the way. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so if you're talking to somebody that's super high D, they don't want to stay on the phone for very long, they know exactly what they want, they're straight to the point, would you still run through exactly how you just did it, or would you tailor it with shorter questions?
I'm a high D. I'm a 99% D. I learned this living in Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of high Ds. There's no way I would shorten it. I might mirror and match them. But what I would explain, if I was picking up on the fact they were like a fast-paced person, I would probably throw in there, hey, Ryan, I'm going to ask you some questions now that will save us time in the long run. So if I could have like 15 minutes of your time now, it will likely save us hours in the long run. So I might say that, but there's no way I'm going to short circuit that. I have a standard, and this is what I want for you guys. Like, know your worth And I'm not going to serve that client as well. Like, think of how well I could serve Patricia right now. I know exactly what she needs. I know her financial situation. Our appointment is not going to have to be that long. But if I don't ask all these questions, I'm going to have to ask them at some point. And I'd rather walk into the appointment ready. It really does save time. Here's an interesting stat we found on our team. When we did not meet first, you might want to write this down because it's something you could share with clients. When we did not meet with them first, we had to show them about 12 houses to find one that they liked. When we pre-screened them properly and all that stuff, it only took 3, like 3 to 4. So to that point, Ryan, yeah, it doesn't matter if they're high D. The process is the process.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It might just sound like, okay, Ryan, what's your square footage? What's your price range? All right, who are the decision makers? Whereas if I'm talking to someone more like a high I might say, okay, Ryan, so tell me a little bit about your price range. So I might just change my tonality, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Louise, go ahead.
Let's explore that whiteboard. Did you write that down just from the conversation?
Yeah.
So that's gold. I'm trying
Yeah.
to. So
It's actually a little hard to read because my marker's like too big, I think. So it's a little squishy.
but so at the top, I mean, we don't have to read it word for word, but at the top, like you're writing down so that you can there's a term that you use, keyword backtrack, right?
Yeah. Yep. So she said out of the gate, and this is why it's great, because when I use their words, it builds rapport. So for kids, I want more space, and I underlined more space because that was kind of like the pain point. So that's what I asked about. What would more space do for you? Sanity. And then we
Okay.
kind of laughed about it. Okay, so I don't remember my question, but what would talk to me about the sanity comment? Well, the kids, I want them near me to snuggle. I work from home. We make calls. I need a dedicated office space. So these are her words. This is going to go in her notes now. And anybody who works with this client, now if I'm on a team, I need to tell the listing manager, everybody who would possibly work with Patricia needs to see this and know it.
Okay. Dedicated office, agents, and something. And
Yeah,
then
it's a little hard to read.
you went to the next column. You created another column because you couldn't go more vertical.
Yeah. So when I said, is there anything else that makes you want to move? And she said, yes. I said, okay. And I started fresh at the top because now I'm starting from fresh. So I need to dig 3 deep in the second one now. So bigger house. Okay. What would that do? She talked about a pool, yard, all that.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I'm out of space on the whiteboard, but if I got to the end of this and I said, is there anything else? And she said, yes, I would have started a 3rd column and a 4th. By the way, I don't know if anybody noticed. I wanted to stop and point it out, but I didn't want to interrupt the role play. Did anybody notice at the end of the 1st column? Okay. I said, Patricia, is there anything else that makes you want to move? And she got really quiet for a few seconds. And you want to get comfortable with silence. And I could tell now on the phone, I wouldn't see her, but because I could see her face, she was kind of doing this, which is the thinking face, like, And so I knew, like, she's thinking. The silence doesn't mean, oh, I should fill it. This is awkward. She was thinking. And then it was like, well, yeah, actually, I want the pool and hide and seek. Like, I have a visual now. I actually, in my head, feel like I'm visualizing this house. It's got trees around it. It's overlooking the lake. The kids are playing hide and seek. For some reason in my head, it's a stone house. I don't know why it's a stone house. Probably because you said camp. That's probably why. But that's what you want. You want to be able to pretty much visualize it in your head because of everything they've told you. I'm visualizing kids running around while they're working. I can see it. And that's what you want.
And real quick, Patricia, how did you feel being on the receiving end of it?
That's a great question because we're role playing. And so, yes, it was a very real example, but it got very real with the questions. Like she has me actually thinking about like, I'm going to go research all of this right now and put a plan in place because it just, those questions were so good because it got me from just browsing, which is very real. Like I'm just looking. I just want to see what the market is. I'm going to do that right now. I just want to understand the market to actually what's the plan. And I could actually see this within the next 2 years, probably. Like I don't see why that couldn't be a reality.
So
Yeah.
on a
From
scale of-
from these questions and the way she also her tonality and the way she also approached it, like none of this was crazy in her mind, right? Like it wasn't unrealistic, it wasn't out of possibility. Like let's figure out how we can make this happen.
Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, let me say this real quick. One, I think it's so cool that you were just yourself. Do you see why I tell you when you're practicing with people, be yourself or be realistic? Because you have takeaways just from that. In full disclosure, I'm 1 minute late to be recording your on-demand content for January. I have a coach waiting for me to interview them for your January on-demand content. So I'm going to have to bounce in just a second. But here's the thing. This is why I harp on motivation must be first. Because when she said I might be 18 months out, literally what popped in my head is, why would you wait 18 months to have all this? Like, you have a clear vision. You sound very excited about it. Why would you wait 18 months? And then those 4 questions on a scale of 0 to 10, what would you be? What makes it that number? And isolated, her answers told me the only thing holding her back is money. So I knew immediately my marching orders are to figure out the money. Now, I can't necessarily fix it. But if I could show her a path, this could actually happen. Yeah. So Patricia, you're gonna have to somehow update us on this because now I'm really fascinated.
I feel like this will be the biggest testimonial for you when I pull this off.
Yeah, please go run number. I really am super curious. I wish you were in my market. This is why I love real estate. It's so fun to help people hit goals. Like, this is why questions matter, guys. I think this is such a fun job. And if Patricia lived in my market, I would not be able to wait till Friday to figure this out because it sounds fun. And I would want to go to her house and have a party because it sounds like a fun house. It makes your job more fun when you know why they want to do it. So it serves your client, but it also serves you. All right, I don't want to keep Chris waiting. You'll meet Chris in January because he's your on-demand interview for January. I need to go get him out of the waiting room, so I'm going to go. You guys have a wonderful Christmas. Watch the portal for some on-demand content. I have 3 videos dropping for you shortly on different topics to get us through the end of the year. And then I'll see you live on January the 8th. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Patricia. Please keep us posted.